What is up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in. This is the Matt Ramage Show. I am joined today by a legendary Packer fan. All right. But before we get into that, I want to give a big shout out to Quick Trip for sponsoring the show. And right now, according to their social media posts, you can get white bread for 79 cents. A limit of 5. I love me some Quick Trip bread, nice and soft. Throw some peanut butter in that thing, whatever you throw in it at your house. But big shout out to Quick Trip. But now we are joined. This is a person who I wanted to have on for a long time. Steve, the owner, Tate. All right. How are you doing, Steve? How have you been?
I'm doing real well, Matt. Things are going good. Obviously, the season didn't end the way we wanted it and had hopes, questioning up and down at times, but after the Viking game, had hopes pretty high. And, well, now it saves me playoff money because I'm not going to any games.
Yeah, I wasn't real confident up until the Vikings game. Then I was like, oh, maybe they can actually do it. I mean, I'm always confident, like I always like brag about, how I am. I'm chatty fan. And but even this season, I was like, I don't know after a couple of those losses, but it is what it is. You ride with them. You know what I mean? It was a weird season that we haven't had in a while.
Exactly. And I tell you, Matt, I go back to remember a little bit of the 60s and the 70s and 80s, and you learned in the 70s and 80s to talk big before the game or before the season. So, and now I really, the last 30 years, people come up to me, especially, you'll be out and about with your cheese wedge on like most of us are, right? Anyhow, and people walk up to me and say, do you think the Packers have a chance of winning? And I go, I did in the 70s and 80s with Favre and Rodgers. Yeah, I think we got a chance of winning.
Yeah, there's always a chance. Yeah, when you're wearing that cheese wedge, that gets you attention. I remember one time I did it was supposed to be a TV show on History Channel about Wisconsin and the cheese. So I had a cheese head they said bring with me. So I just wore it walking down the street in Madison like on a Tuesday. People were honking their horn at me. Hey, go Pack, go. But they ended up not using that for TV anyways, but it was cool. But yeah, that cheese wedge, speaking of that, when did you start like being, how you're known, the cheese wedge, the owner? When did that all start?
So I'll just clarify one thing. People, how you start out. Legendary fan. I have a legendary wedge. That's what I have. I'm just like, thousands and thousands of other Packer fans, or what should I say, 400,000 shareholders or owners, What I just, people ask me all the time, man, when did you become a Packer fan? And I've been asked that so much. I've really have researched it, and I tell people now it's April of 1957 because I was born in January of 58. So I haven't tracked it back any further than that. But just always a Packer fan. And so grew up here, and then moved away in the military and then moved away for work to Nebraska. And I tell you, back in the days when there wasn't the internet, you had to really look, for where the Packers are. And I started finding Packer bars in other states and that kind of stuff. And then I was traveling Nebraska working on computer stuff, and I would just collect memorabilia, and I always wanted to get a share of stock. I was collecting different stuff, and when it came to buying stuff in the 70s and 80s, they'd almost pay you to take it.
Yeah.
There's some bleak times, but all of a sudden I got a chance to buy a share of stock in 97. And I'm telling you, that one was not the popular one. And even Packer fans kind of gave me a hard time. And I said, man, I was willing to buy a certificate just to have, let alone get one on with my name on it. And that came in November of 1997. Well, I haven't even been to a playoff game yet with the Packers. And this is the second year coming around. They've won Super Bowl 31, which is the anniversary today, right?
Yeah, it is 26 years today.
So 26 years today. And we were getting ready to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on that second run. And we all knew we were going to win it. We're going to do back to back. And my mother had gone out and bought 4 playoff tickets in the first and second row of the north end zone. And my sister, who lives with me now, says, I'm going to make up a banner to drape over. And you could drape them back then, and they'd leave them hang. Yeah. And as she was doing that, when I moved back from Nebraska, a friend of mine worked for a Wisconsin company, and they gave her a cheese wedge. She goes, you take this thing. I'm never wearing it. Well, I wore it someday, but I hadn't really wear a cheese wedge. But, man, over time, that's really gotten known as even though it started with the Brewers, as a Packer thing and a Wisconsin thing. And now people want to be cheeseheads all over the world, right? So I grabbed this cheese wedge this friend gave me. I'm going to go and see what my sister's making. And I said to myself, ha ha, you're like Jerry Jones. I mean, as an owner, not as some of his hands and everything. But and as I'm going over to my sister, over to my folks' house where my sister was living, I just said, I'm an NFL owner. It wasn't any thought. It wasn't a lot of. It was just natural passion flowing out, right? And so she made this banner up, and then which I still have to this day. And then she yellow, gold wedge, and she with green hand did the NFL owner. And I didn't spend any more time on it. Well, we come up the game, we're walking, people are stopping and taking photos and smiling and laughing. And it was just a fun time. It was a way to bring a little smile to people's faces. And, Matt, I tell you, there's a lot of things goofy with social media. What's cool now is I get to meet a lot of people because they see your photo and whatever. And, hey, can I swing by and see you? Sure. Yeah. And I get to go around people their first time at Lambeau Field. And, when these are people that are passionate fans, a lot of times from the other teams, and they just cannot believe, right there in around those homes, Green Bay, our history and how friendly we are and showing people around. So walking in that day. So that was, I turned 40 in January 3rd of 1998. And then it was January 4th was that game. And so that's the first time I ever wore my NFL owner wedge.
That is awesome. Yeah, and that's true. Like what you're talking about, walking around Lambeau Field, and like when people like know who you are. To me, it's the most fun thing ever. Just walking around Lambeau Field, and people stopping to say hi, and like you say, like tell you stories. So sometimes like it's their first time there, and it just like to me, it's one of my favorite parts about being a Packer fan. It's not even just going to the game, but being around the game, even training camp.
Right. It's a privilege, and that's why I've come to find I did not go to Super Bowl 31. Really didn't have the funds quite yet, and still getting. But I went to Super Bowl 45, and I was actually able to go to that game. And just how many Packer fans converge on the scene, and you just get to meet a lot. You have a lot in common just right because of that, right? And then I started going to the next 3 Super Bowls. I just went to those cities because I started knowing fans from the other teams, and they were there. And you just meet a lot of Packer fans. Last one I went to was Super Bowl 54 in Miami, and I'm walking on South Beach, and a Packer guy comes up and grabs me. Was a guy in the practice squad. I mean, I walked on the beach, with my wedge on, just like we all do. Yeah. Anyhow, and that's it. What is the wedge originally of? That was meant derogatory by people in Illinois towards us, like we're nothing but a bunch of block cheeseheads, and okay, we are, and just we're cheeseheads, we're proud of it. So, you just take some of those insults and roll with them, and then you can learn to laugh at yourself and laugh with them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is that how it really started, the cheesehead thing, as an insult?
That's what I heard. I thought it was with the Chicago White Sox fans towards Brewer fans.
All right,
and
towards
the guy
Wisconsin.
Who did it, Ralph, who first made the first cheese wedge, took it out of his mom's couch, took the full piece and cut it out. He was going to a Brewers game.
That's awesome. Yeah, the cheese head thing is so iconic though, because like even when he played like Philly, I saw people had a cheese head, but he made it Philly whatever, and like I did see a lot of Viking fans. They have like the cheese shredder. Like there's different ways other fans do it. I love it. I think the whole thing. I'm not a cheese head type of guy. Like I don't think I can pull it off. But you absolutely kill it.
So here's what's funny about it too. And I think, Wisconsin and the beard and all that kind of stuff, kind of Northwoods and hunting and, all that kind of stuff and cheese and lumberjack, all that. Right. But the most iconic really, when you look at Frozen Tundra, man, I mean, geez, Jeff does. And Jeff now makes my wedge, and he makes a lot of foam stuff. He's really very creative. And then of course, St. Vince, you got sports and religion and everything else, so there's a lot of.
Yeah, he's cool. One that I've never got the chance to meet.
Really?
But, I've never been where he was, but I remember because like you were like you and St. Vince, but like who I saw on TV, like before I ever did any social media Packer stuff. I remember seeing you on TV and like that is awesome, And then when I remember the first time I met you, like you knew who I was. And I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Well,
I wasn't expecting that.
You're a passionate fan and you do a lot of cool things. And you have a fun, there's one thing about smack talk. I don't do a lot of it, but there's one thing about it when you can be able to laugh and roll with it, and you're going to get it. If you're going to give it out, you're going to get it, and you got to find a way of making it fun and enjoyable and that kind of stuff. And I just, and here's the thing with St. Vince. I found out I've met him. He used to live in Madison here. We actually I went to 3 different high schools down here. We moved all the time growing up. We didn't have anything and moved a lot. I think sometimes we got evicted, to tell you the truth. Anyhow, he went to Oregon High School, and I went there a couple years after him.
Oh, all right.
Kind of a funny little, doesn't mean really. And so I've gotten to meet he and B, his wife, and them very well. You don't see them quite as much because now late in the cold, they go down to Arizona, but really good people, fun. When you meet him, you'll have a good time. Truly a dedicated Packer fan. Oh, he loves giving the Viking stuff. Oof. And the thing about the cheese wedge, I've got a little line. I go up to people and I go, "There's no defacing the cheese," and they'll say whatever. The funniest comeback I had was at the Packer, was the Badger LSU game, and there was this lady, Southern lady, and she had made it the colors of their school, which looks like Viking colors. Anyhow, I said, "There's no defacing the cheese," and she goes, "I didn't deface it. I made it better."
That is absolutely great. But yeah, I forgot what I was going to ask you. I just had one in my head. It popped out. But let me ask you this: what is your first memory of being a Packer fan?
I get asked that. Honestly, man, my dad, we didn't have anything, and he did odd jobs and worked his way up and was a self-taught mechanic. And, he just worked 6 days a week, long hour days. There were days that, I just didn't see him, he came back so late from work and stuff. But the one thing that was kind of a staple of our house was, he used to race cycles a little bit. And then because he was a cycle mechanic eventually, and then he quit doing that, and we then started going to church because I'm the oldest. We'd go to church, come home, watch the Packers, and go out hunting. And a lot of times, the only meat we got was what we shot. We weren't big game hunters. We were going up to get food, And all of a sudden, I realized sometimes we'd go out and hunt, and sometimes we didn't. So here's my first memories of this. My dad would say, if the Packers lost, don't go out and ask. Because back in those days, they were considered varmints, and people weren't leasing land and all that. So you'd go up and ask them, if the Packers won, you would get yes. If they lost, they would, no, get off my land. So and so luckily in the 60s, they won a lot. So we got to hunt a lot. So that's kind of my first kind of memories, going to church, watching the Packers, and then going out hunting. And it was just that kind of thing. I kind of remember the Super Bowls because they weren't big, but they had the jet packs and some of those big, you remember stuff like that. But I just remember I just grew up, I just loved football and I was a small kid for a lot of years. So it was a sport I liked, and it was iconic for Wisconsin. And we were the team of the 60s, and that was my childhood. So that's what I remember of all that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to talk to people who were around back then, like who know, like, cause the NFL wasn't what it is now. So like they won a Super Bowl, like they were doing good. And I don't think people even realize that it's a pretty cool thing that's like happening here.
And there was the incentive too, because those guys made more money if they got to the playoffs. Now it's a cut and pay. Their average, what they make per game, a lot of those guys make more per game in the regular season than they do in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. So you've been to like so many games. Like, do you even know how many games that you've been to?
I never really started tracking that, but it took. So first of all, I never made a regular season game till I was 37. So I know people that started. I got friends that, my bear friend that I have. He said years ago, he said, "Why don't you come and sit with me at Soldier Field? I'll sit at you at Lambeau. We don't have to worry about getting tickets." I said, "Great." He's been to 700 some games. He's been to more games than some NFL teams have played.
That's wild.
I have another friend that has gone to every Buffalo's Bills game. I was just talking to him this week. He graduated 70 years ago, and he's still up going to games. He went to every Buffalo's Bill game since 1960 until last year when he had to go to the hospital for a month. Up until then, he'd been to every home game since 1960.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, you meet, so how many games I've been to? I know I'm somewhere around the 200 mark. And I never had a goal really necessarily to make it to all the stadiums, but I started meeting friends from, Pro Football's Ultimate Fan Association and meeting friends there and finding out how cool they were. Cause I don't want to go there and just be smack talked to. And they know about sportsmanship, fellowship, and charitable.
Yeah.
What does charity have to do with it? Well, you get on TV and get a little platform. Are you giving back a little bit? And a lot of these people do some amazing things. So that kind of amped my game up there. And then I started wanting to go and see what I got to go kind of like really behind the lines, right? I got to go to stay within their houses and see how they set up their tailgates. And some of them are just unbelievable. One guy just set up this huge tailgate. He would start on Tuesdays, he was in Oakland, go and get fresh fish. Saturday was, rub and smoking meat and all that all day long. And it was just kind of interesting seeing what these people do at these different stadiums. So I haven't been to all the stadiums. I think I got like 6 or 7. The weird thing is I haven't been to any of the 3 Florida teams. It just hasn't worked out.
Yeah. And those are the ones that seem like it'd be fun, nice weather. So yeah. What is your favorite stadium to go to for away games?
Oh, that's so tough. Wow, that's a good question. My favorite. Well, I lived in Omaha for a number of years, and I've probably been to Chiefs Stadium before moving back home. I've probably been there 5 times, and they just got such a unique thing. I'll tell you, if anyone, they have the Arrowhead at one side, parking lot all in between, and then Royal Stadium. It's just, It's massive. So if you get up on the one side, you can look, and all you see is just all tailgating and grilling and smoking and barbecues. And so that's pretty unique. And we're not a natural rival. So I've had some really good times there. I tell you, what I have mostly is the friends that I've stayed with, because I've had a great time staying with friends in Philly. I'll tell you though, Philly, they've earned their reputation. Now, it's not as bad as they make it out. And they talk about throwing snowballs at Santa Claus. Well, that was 1969. So that keeps coming up. But they're not so politically correct there. They're going to warn you, and you better listen. Because I'll give an example. I was there at that game, and there was a Philly fan and a Philly fan. And this Philly fan was holding up a sign and blocking them because the game was this way. Guy says, "Hey, buddy, put down the sign." Next play, the sign doesn't go. "Hey, you bleep, 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 put down that sign." Sign stays up for the second play. "Hey, you bleep, bleep, bleep. I'm going to come down and bleep you and your family, you bleep." Security came over and took the guy's sign away because there was going to be a fight. Yeah. So it's a little more rugged, and they're into their team. You go there, you better, I say a lot of times, guys, you're a guest. Would you walk in somebody's house, throw your feet up, and start giving them orders?
Yeah.
So I just see that sometimes. The second thing I'll say to people when you go to opposing stadium, how does standing up and turning around improve your life?
Yeah.
You're just looking.
That's the thing, because I talk a little bit of trash on the internet, but like mostly like the people I talk trash to, a lot of them I know. I don't really know, but we've talked offside like messages, and it's just fun. It's just like screwing around. Like, I'm not taking personal shots at people, but I still worry about going to like a different team stadium and just getting rocked. Someone like, "Hey, I saw that guy on the internet talking shit about my team," and I'm not a fighter. I used to be a runner, not a fighter. Now I'm neither, so I got to just watch my mouth.
So now you're just a hitter, huh?
Yeah, no, I'll get hit. But I think it'd be cool to go to other team stadiums. But yeah, I'd have to come with a group, because I'm not trying to get wrong. But like you said, I wouldn't go to another team stadium and talk trash like that. I do that on the internet. I wouldn't go to someone, even when I'm at Lambeau Field, there's a Vikings fan or Bears fan. Like, I'm like, "Hey, what's up, man?" Like, it's not real. It's like, the trash talk about your teams.
And that's because, and I have friends a lot of times sit by me from the other team, and I'll have people, someone get, "Hey, what do you do that for?" I go, "Because I want to go sit in their stadium and be safe. And I'd rather go with a friend and have somebody there that's kind of buff it. So in case somebody, and who's the worst." So, man, I'll tell you, I have another thing I do. I don't eat or drink much when I get to it. And I get there early. I'm there for the hotel gate, because I don't want to have to go to the bathroom, especially on the road. Because who's in there? Dumb, but thinks he's smart, drunk guy.
Yeah.
And just as well, that wedge stands out. And I've even had Packer fans sometimes get on you and say stuff. I'll tell you another thing. I've tried this at Lambeau Field, and I've stopped. Fans come in there, and I sit on the visitor side. I've been sitting there since 2003 through tickets through friends. They had it, but I've been paying them since 2000. But I'm blessed to have them, grateful. They're really kind and friendly. But I sit on the visitor side. Great seats, but a lot of times we have people there at the first game, Packer fans, and they are yelling, we have the ball. And I've told guys, hey, not when we have the ball. Shut up. I paid my ticket. Shut up. They play better when I yell. One time it was 12 guys. They just started riding me, and I just said, okay, they're not here to try to figure out how to support the team.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like with a lot of fans, like even me, like there's certain times when I had a few beers and I start yelling. All right, no, they're on offense. Shut up. I tell myself, shut your mouth, because
you know that, right? And if somebody remind you, oh yeah,
it's like, because that is literally the reason why fans are there. Like you are a part of it. Like, I mean, not everyone's able, but everyone who's able should be up, screaming, yelling at the right times.
So speaking just of that, Kansas City's loud, but it's open air. And people say, well, Seattle. Now, Seattle, they have no real tailgating, and I've got great Seattle fans, really enjoy going out there. There's a lot to see around Seattle, the city, and around anyhow. It's just beautiful country. But yes, they've got it curved, but it's still open at the top, and the one end zone is open. I'm telling you, two nights before going there, I was at this little pep rally thing, and the guy says, take some earplugs with you. I said, I don't need earplugs. Just take them with you. Before the game started, I was in the closed end zone. They're in my ears. It's at a level you can't believe. And it's not just because of the acoustics, because the Metrodome, which I've been in, or U.S. Bank for the Vikings, or the Superdome for the Saints would be way louder. I'm telling you, those people stand up and yell their guts out when the other team's on, and they're quiet. It is a game changer. I'll tell you, it just is unbelievable how loud they could be. Now, I think now that they're not doing well in COVID, maybe they're not as many of the normal fans are always there. But man, you get a stadium where the vast majority are your people and they are yelling their guts out, it really impacts that other team.
Yeah, I think the big thing for like Chiefs fans is they got the reputation for being loud, so then they got even louder. Because like people start talking about it, like, hey, I think Eagles fans do that too. With people call them crazy, like, oh, we can be crazy if you want to call us crazy. But I Chiefs fans, I've never been there, obviously, but they know how to represent. So, what fan base do you think like treats you the best, like on the road, like that you have a good time with?
I'm going to say something. I was shocked this year. I'm telling you, of all the stadiums I was going to go to, the one that concerned me the most was Minnesota. Because as close to I've ever seen a fight at Lambeau Field, it has been with Viking fans. Yeah. And obviously we've had more on the line. Yes, I know the Bears Packers are the oldest, but let's face it, we've had more over the last 20, 30 years between us and the Vikings than anything. And I went over, and the first time I walked around over there, I'm walking around, and I heard this 3 times. We're Minnesota nice. I never heard that in my life. And that first time I was walking around, and I didn't have any real guff. I've gone a couple times, and I've had a few goofballs, but nothing bad. Matt, this last time I went up there, and I've gotten to know the Viking World Order. Man, they're a good group, man. They have a lot. I don't know. It's they have a lot of members, and I have gone right by the U.S. Bank and tailgated with them. I tailgated with them. Never heard a crossword or anything. Walked through a whole bunch of other people tailgating to another lot. Had a great time there with a whole bunch of different fans. Walked out over another block across. Went to this other guy that I met through a friend and came back. I didn't hear one cuss word or one negative thing. I'm telling you, it was the beginning of the season. And so first of all, I didn't even know if I was going to the game till the Wednesday before that game happened, because my wife had gone through. I haven't gone to over COVID. I have a sister lives with a really poor immune system, so we didn't go anywhere. I didn't go to a game that whole 2020, and then 2021. I was thinking I was going to go, and my wife went through breast cancer. Praise God, she's clear and went through that. But that's a whole nother thing, and you don't want to bring a cold home. She was finally clear through it all. I put on, hey, I'll come up there Wednesday. I just put on, hey, can I come up there Wednesday? And a Viking friend, the second biggest following I have on Facebook are Viking fans. again, it's just shocking to me how close and how many I have. And I went up there and she offered it right away. And I said, sure. And she came and sat with me when we played them this year. So a little reciprocating too of hospitality back and forth. But I'm telling you, before I was going to the stadium, I just stopped and paused and said, this is a close. I almost said, am I in Green Bay? I didn't hear anything negative about it. Now, I hear people all the time say they've had things thrown at them, spit on them.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Here's what I say with that. I think every fan base has 1 or 2% idiots. But if you're in a town of 9 million or you're a town of 100,000, the chance of running into them are slimmer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I agree because the Packer fans ain't all saints and just the. I mean, I think mostly we do pretty good, especially at the game. Like I always say, like we talk trash on the internet, but like if I go to Lambeau Field, like I'll I go out of my way to like be friendly. I mean, I'm not gonna like go too far. I don't want to be too nice to them, get them. No, but I'm always like nice. I mean, they're just people. We're all repping our teams. The only time I ever said anything, we were at the Eagles played the Packers. This is I don't know what year, like 2016 or something. And the Eagles were better than the Packers. Like the record was better. And so Eagles fans were like doing all these chants before the game. We were in like a VIP, I wouldn't say VIP, but a tailgate you pay for, really. And they were there with us. And I remember waiting in line at the bathroom. We were chanting "The Bears Still Suck" because that song came on. And they're like, don't they know who we're playing? But they were doing all their chants, like the Eagles thing. So then after the game, the Packers won. And I was, I had a few beers in me. I was walking down the steps to leave. And I started yelling. I said, hey, how come Eagles fans got quiet? And I was kind of like laughing at it because they're walking down. And someone's like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. They'll all come up here and stomp you. And I was like, yeah, good thought. Maybe I'll just pipe down.
That's what's funny about it, right? I was sitting at that game and with an Eagles fan, and every time they score, they stand up and spell it out. But I still want them to have it. But and the second time he did it, I said, so when I come to Philly and I score, I can stand up and spell out Packers. He goes, I wouldn't do that.
I don't get the spelling thing. I get the Jets because it's short, but like I'm not going to be spelling out Packers. Like I'm glad that's not our chant. Go Pack, go right to the point. No one's confused.
Right.
2 words. But
same thing. I just go. I don't. Yeah. I think maybe that's about the only thing they know how to spell. Anyhow, second thing, and I usually say when somebody spells it out, I go, "You guys are getting good at that. You really are."
And practice makes perfect.
I love it when you go to Soldier Field, and they sing their Bear Down song. They sing it on field goals. I said, "You guys sing for field goals?"
Like while they're kicking?
No, it's
like okay. That makes it even weirder.
They don't. Well, no, but it's right if they score. But I think sometimes they don't know if they're going to score again.
I know, right? They got this one celebration in.
But here's another weird thing, man.
Go ahead.
I have gone to I'm thinking now probably 12 games in Soldier Field. I have never seen the Packers lose there.
Really?
Anytime.
So they should be really giving you, free roll. We got to make sure that dude's there.
I want to be clear on that. I love the Pack organization, know a lot of people there. Obviously know a lot of the players and stuff. It's the fan base, it's the relationship, but I don't have it. I know people in the organization, but I just go to the games. And I'm not saying they owe me anything. We got a big fan base. There's a lot. I don't even get sideline passes or any of that stuff. The sideline passes I've ever had at Lambeau Field have been twice from an Eagles fan and from another fan. That's the only time I've ever been on the sideline. So it's a pleasure and to be there in it. I don't get anything. And I'll tell you, some of the things you get to do a few things and stuff like that. And people then, I've had a few people call them, hey, we're this organization and we'd like to have you make an appearance. And a lot of it back when was pretty small, peanuts anyhow. I just said, donate it to the River Food Pantry. So I don't make money off it. I just go to these games. I go on my own dime. And if there is sometimes an appearance thing, I say, hey, send it to the River Food Pantry. That way I can come and go when I want. I'm still a fan. You know what I mean? Because I know what you're doing is fun, but there's some dictates too. When you start, you got your sponsor to keep happy. You've got people to keep happy. And I just never got into that arena of it.
Yeah. But you've been on commercials, right?
Oh, yep. but a couple of them. So yeah, here's the funny thing I love about the NFL: do not videotape the games. And then there's been a couple commercials where people have tweeted up about the games, and then their commercials will grab them. So yeah, there was one time a couple times I've tweeted something out of the video, and they contact you and say, "Hey, can you do this?" Or every now and then they'll say, "Hey, we have this going on." Another thing too was after we won Super Bowl 45, and the NFL kickoff game was here in Lambeau against the Saints. They just put out a thing to Packer fans saying, "Hey, we're doing a little shoot for a commercial. Show up." And that's really where I met Wayne Sargent, the ultimate Packer fan. We met each other, in 2011 at this little commercial shoot. And I tell you what, you do those kind of things, you're there all day long, and sometimes you're not even, just like you said, nothing's used. You're just there standing around. Okay, come over here, do this, 3 or 4 takes, and it just. But probably the funnest one was after the Packers won Super Bowl 45. 60 Minutes came, and they just wanted to interview 6 shareholder owners, and St. Vince was one of them, and myself, and then 4 other people, and everything was just one take. We sat down, one take. The only thing they did a double take on was at the end I put my wedge down, and they came in and took a couple takes because it says "God, Family, Packers," Vince's line, right?
Yeah.
And when we got done, Scott, was it Pelly? He's been to wars, all sorts of stuff for 60 Minutes. He just stopped. You could see a tear in his eye, and he said, "There's just really no place like this in sports, because it's still small town America. Yes, the NFL's big bucks, and yes, it's a huge corporation, but still at its core, Green Bay is like a collegiate atmosphere where, it's family and friends, and there's just not any real experience like that in major pro sports."
I totally agree. Like, even like I say, go down to training camp. Like, I'm kind of new. We're like, I didn't always go to like all the games, to go to training camp and like be always around. But like, since I started doing this stuff, I like went to training camp. Like, dude, it's so fun. Like, it is like a family, because there's certain people that you see only at training camp, and there's the new people that you meet. Like, you're just walking around, and everyone's a Packer fan. You just start talking to people. It's awesome.
And that's where I like when you had Fan Fest. You met certain people there for a couple. There would be mini camps. Got to know certain people. Training camp. There's certain people who come in just, especially when they live way out of town. And everyone thinks I live in Green Bay, and I live outside of Madison and DeForest. So yeah, it's only a 2-hour shot up and back. And I used to drive a lot for work, so it doesn't. There's a lot of days I'll go up for mini camp, come home. There's some days on Packer weekends I'll just go up there Saturday, meet friends, come back home, and come right back up on Sunday. Sometimes I spend, but not very often. And you get to know these friends. You get to have those relationships, and that's why when stuff stops sometimes, you just go, that's where you just met these people here or there. And some of the coolest things was even like there was a big Packer bar in Chicago called Will's Northwoods Inn, and they used to have Packer Palooza. Well, that was over the draft time, and now that's not happening anymore. But I went down there for years, and that was definitely one where a father and son would show up, and each year they wanted me to take a photo as their son was growing. It was just, you just had those kind of little glimpses and little moments in time and history for you. Just the relationship was kind of fun.
Yeah, that is awesome. Like, taking a picture like that. Yeah, guys, I remember being at training camp. My nephew came with me, and I think it was Orrin Burks was riding by on a bike, saw me and said, "Hey, what's up, Matt?" And then my nephew thought I was like next level. Like, he's like, "Whoa, he knew who you were." And it was like and I was like, that was the best thing ever.
So years ago, I used to bring up my niece and nephews, and we would spend the weekend up there, and I would camp out just in Brown County, just as you're kind of like you're going up into Door County, but it's not officially Door County yet, and camp there, and then come down Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then pack up, go, and just have them there doing different things. And the same, you start meeting. And one time I was in the stands, and this again, not as, we're going back probably close to 30 years now, 25 for sure. And I happen to have Frankie Winter's jersey on. Well, who had a lineman's jersey on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there taking photos and all of a sudden the guys in the field started yelling, Frankie, you got to get over here. Frank, come on, get on the field. You can't be up in the stands. And they were giving him a hard time and joking, but they watch who's in the stands, they see who's who, right? And they do see stuff, and like that, they get to see you. And one of the time that happened, I was walking around with some Tampa Bay fans, just showing them around, and Evan Dietrich Smith had just gone down there, and I was friends with his wife on Facebook because she's a Wisconsin woman, and so we were just friends. Then we didn't do a lot, but well, he gets off the bus. These Tampa Bay guys are walking back. The Tampa Bay fans are. I'm standing back. Evan gets out, starts walking up, and goes, "Hey, Steve, the owner. Our guys are saying hi to you and not us." And I go, "Hey, there's a little different connection here."
That's awesome.
It actually made their fans. They were a man.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, and then that's how it is, dude. Like people, especially you, like the Packer players know me from Instagram because I used to do those videos, haha, and then some of them follow me, and so they kind of see what I do, but they recognize me. But you, like, you're always there. Like you say, you're in the stands. Like everyone knows who you are. You're on the jumbotron all the time. I was on. I think the first time I called in sick to work, I was on a jumbotron. I remember another guy at my work called in sick. And they're like, "Oh, someone posted a picture of you at Lambeau Field." He's like, "Matt was on the jumbotron." But it was all good. We get sick days, you know what I mean? But
you had to go up there for some healing.
You know, that's what you gotta do. So speaking of all the games that you've been to, what was like the best game? Like one of the more classic games that you were at?
So, obviously, you remember your very first time at Lambeau Field and the snow globe against Seattle, especially when we were down. Those kind of really stand out. I was at the NFC Championship game against the Bears. But, I mean, going to Super Bowl 45, Matt, I didn't think I'd ever go to Super Bowl. And the weird thing is, at that time, the Pro Football's Ultimate Fan Association was trying to see if they could do some advertising and make some more connections. So they actually paid for my ticket.
Oh, no kidding! We got a
ticket at face value, and then landed a couple of. And at one point, I'm talking with Herb Adderley, and he's now. But I'm just sitting on the phone saying, "I'm buying a ticket from Herb Adderley, a Packer Hall of Famer," and we got to know each other. And after that, I sent him a jersey, and he just signed. Just all sorts of. It just is full. He was a great guy, and so you're going to that, and you just really find it hard to believe I'm going to a Super Bowl. And to see your team win, I mean, that was the most awesome. And I still kept a lot of my emotions together. And as you're just sitting there basking in it and everything else and walking out. And then I get outside, and I was with Darth Packer, which not to be confused with Pac Vader, who's now there. The guy at the game we were at, that's Pac Vader. But this other guy has the full Packer helmet and everything. He doesn't come up. He's from Indiana. And we're walking out. I called my wife, and it's just funny. Some things you got all these emotions going, and the minute I started talking to her, I felt like I was going to cry. And I'll even talk about Super Bowl 31. I wasn't at that, but when the Packers won, my high school buddy called me up and said, "Man, this is the greatest day of my life." And I said, "I'm with you, pal, because yes, we won a lot, and yeah, we have a great history, but you just didn't think Little Green Bay was going to win again, and we won that one." And my wife's looking at me and she goes, and she's a Packer fan, but somehow she's just not at the level of some of us.
Yeah.
And she goes, "The greatest day, like getting married?" Or I said, "Yeah, those are great days, but you think those are going to happen in your life. You just don't think you're going to see the Packers win another Super Bowl."
Yeah. I'm just saying, a lot of people get married. Not everyone gets to see their team win a Super Bowl.
So even that kind of history and stuff. So, and I know a lot of Packer fans like to, we've only won 2 with Favre and Rod, 1 apiece. But we were there. We were in the games. We had so yeah. Would I've liked to have more championships? Yeah, I would. But that's another thing I tell people all the time. I'll bring this up. So I have that ring, and people go, "What's that?" I said, "Not when you win 1, 2, or 12, but when we win 13 NFL titles, they get that big."
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it was what I was gonna say before. I think I might have lost it again. I think I did. See, my brain.
I talked too long. You got to say, "Steve, I got to cut in."
No, it's what you were talking about. But yeah, because that like we were talking about the Vikings earlier, about like And I've told Viking fans that I knew this, like, enjoy this season. And I used to make jokes with them that this season, enjoy because it's going to end, you'll lose the playoffs, But that's what it is. Like, that's why every season I have fun because I don't know when it's going to end. And people could talk about the 2 ring things, they only have 2 rings in 30 years, but offing quarterbacks. But Super Bowls ain't that easy to win. The Patriots fooled everyone. They did it. It was miraculous and good for them. That's not normal. It takes a lot. Like so many times the Packers, obviously, I'm not going to go through because I don't want to depress people. But there's so many times that they were just right there. And then like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But I say, dude, just enjoy it. If your team is winning and they were even in the playoffs, that was just my hope this year. Just get into the playoffs because then you never know what's going to happen. And then you get to go to the games. You get to talk a little trash. You get to, like Viking fans, I used to joke they can only talk smack in the offseason because they're in the regular season. It doesn't work out. But this year they had a year, so I'll give them their props. But yeah, absolutely. I think if you're a fan and your team, if you're miserable because they don't win the Super Bowl every year, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, you got to enjoy it. Like,
and I'll tell you, Matt. Well, first of all, there was a period in my life where I used to really party a lot and drink a lot, and then finally I got in trouble for different things too, and finally I just had to really talk myself, and so I got into recovery, and I don't drink anymore. But that first couple years when I stopped drinking, finally about my second year, if the Packers lost, it was like I was hanging all my emotions on them. And when they lost, I was a bear to be around for the whole week. And I finally had to, at somewhere in one of that early, I just said, I got to pull out of this. I just couldn't. It was way too much. I was way over getting just moody. And they say the stats are that, when the Packers lose, there's a lot of times domestic violence, a lot of things go up because people. So I pretty much had a year where I really didn't hardly watch them much because until I could get my emotions and my mind right around it. And it's one of those things that seems like, you make a major life change and you seem like you're just losing all the time and you got to give up. And I'm not against anybody else drinking. I'm a guy that I'm just the type when I have one or two, I ain't stopping. I'm just not. And so that's me. And then when I stopped, my emotions were all over the place. So I stopped watching the Packers, and I gave up that for almost a kind of a year. Now I follow them, but I just didn't. I just had to just really pull back a lot. And now look where I'm at. You give something up, and now years later you have a wedge, and you get to talk about it more.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, sometimes you have because the Packers. I'm kind of the same way where I would I used to get really, really mad. Now I get mad. I'm a Packer fan. I get upset. But I remember a time the Packers lost to the Chargers. I walked into work. Someone laughed at me. Said, "Oh, the Packers lost." I thought it was funny. And I cussed them out. And all loud in front of everybody. Whatever. And then I didn't really get in trouble because back then you can kind of get away with that type of stuff. Because it was a friend. It wasn't like some random person. Right. But I remember thinking dude, it ruins my whole week. When they lose, you have to pull it in a little bit. So it doesn't. After the game, you're not kicking your dog or anything. So,
and that's what I'm fanatical about my team. I still have, and people walk up to you. It's just a game. I said, let me find what's important to you. And I'd say, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
So yes, there's some fanaticism in there. And yes, but learning how to control your emotion, because at the end of the day, we all got to get up and go to work the next day. We all got to go up and be with our families. We all got to have lives. So getting to a place where you'd almost like to hurt somebody or that's when and it happens enough times where you get so worked up that you just like to tear something up. You go, yeah, that's me, because this is my entertainment. I can understand the players that have millions of dollars on the line loses, and they're swapping shirts with this.
And they're I try to tell people that the Packers will lose a game, and not just the Packers, every team. I'm not calling out, because I think that's the right thing to do. I see Packer players that later that night are playing video games, and they're on their Instagram, hey, Lincoln Pro, whatever, follow me or whatever. They're living their lives. Obviously, I'm sure they're upset, just like anyone who has a bad day at work, and it's important to them. But they're not, putting their happiness based on whether they win or lose. They gotta keep it moving, and I think fans definitely got to do the same thing.
And that's what I think I think some ways here the sports leads people, because having friends with the other team. and learning to be able to smack talk in a healthy way and learn to, I say, good competition elevates our game. If you're here, I got one or two choices. If you're doing better than I either got to just try to talk bad about you or elevate my game, right? And in good, healthy competition, that's what it does. Now, I'm not saying some people don't cheat and go too far, and that's going about it the wrong way, but usually it keeps, that's why the game keeps evolving and you see more stuff. And you see, I mean, you look at what Rodgers does with his run and stuff, and now you look what Mahomes does. I mean, there's just levels of play that just weren't, if it wasn't for competition and having to try to scope things out and guys working on their craft, it wouldn't be there. But it's still my entertainment seeing guys that big, that fast, do stuff. It's still my entertainment. I got to go. And so we have these fanatical fans. And usually, you know, I'll just, this far, I'll go political. The further somebody gets to one side and the further the other one gets the other, they never can agree. Where I see passionate fans spend their good hard-earned money and will invite somebody in from the other team into their home and into their tailgate and then have dialogue and relationship afterwards, because it doesn't really make sense. My goal isn't just to beat the Bears, isn't just to beat the Vikings. I want to crush them. I do.
Yeah.
But I'm still want to have the relationship. And here's what I found with getting too high or too low. If I have a good friend, a friend with me, and they're on the other team and I win, I don't get too high because I know my pal's hurting. And if I lose, I don't get as low because I know my pal is a little happy. They've won. So it just kind of helps. And to have those memories, then you can share about it and talk about it. And I sit there and say this: if people of different race, gender, ethnicity, religious belief can come together in sports where our goal is actually the opposite, I encourage all fans that can do that and have relatable, carry that into your personal life, be it politics or religion. Because nowadays, if you don't agree exactly like I do, then you are, I just don't know how we lost diversity. We've always said we want diverse thought, but when it comes to almost politics nowadays, either you believe exactly what I believe, or I'm just going to rip you and cancel you. And I go, how did we get here?
Yeah.
So if we can do this in sports and our passion, we should be able to do this in other areas, have passion, but still see the humanity. They're human beings. They have lives. They have families, right?
Oh yeah, I totally agree that like with Bears fans, like I've always said, because I talk trash about the Bears more than anyone else, because like, you know, I love the Bears still. So and my, like, growing up, how it started, growing up, my friend next door was a Bears fan. I lived in Fond du Lac, and like there was jokes like he couldn't come over on Sunday. The Bears were good then, Packers were bad. Like my uncles would bet on like first downs, and they'd joke, we got to bet on crap because we can't bet on the game. We can't bet on the Packers because, you know, they weren't good. So that's kind of how my hatred for the Bears happened, because like they were implanting it. You're like, your friend's team sucked, and like they would joke you can't come over. But now, like, you know, I trash Bears fan or the Bears, but like I like Bear fans. I get along with, like, I've been on other podcasts, Bears podcasts. Like it's not like a real thing. Like sports hate is not real hate. That's why I try to explain this. Because like I'll say I hate the Vikings. Like, you shouldn't hate. I'm like, I don't hate the Vikings. Like, they're players. I'm not wishing them bad. I just want them to lose every time they play football.
And so that's the funny thing. And you know about saying, when you said Super Bowls are hard, I still to this day think the best defense I've ever seen was 85 Bears. And when they won that Super Bowl, Matt, my first thought was, oh my gosh, these guys are going to win 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a happy thought for me.
No.
They never got back. The next year they lost just Marshall. They never got back to the bowl. And why? And you just watch it. Because Ditka and Buddy couldn't check their egos and work as a team. Same thing with the Cowboys. Jimmy and Jerry. They couldn't, if those guys should have won more. But all of a sudden those egos get up, and that's what's so hard. Even that, look at the Rams this year. They were stacked last year. And this year, all of a sudden, you know, they got more advertisings and more, and they get just, and then a few injuries, and you get distracted and you're not as hungry. And it is really hard to even get there, let alone win it.
Yeah, I think it's hard too after you win a Super Bowl to be good. Like everyone thinks all this thing, because even in 2010, everyone's like, oh, the Packers are going to win a whole bunch of these things. But it's hard because when you win a Super Bowl, you lose players. People, they want big contracts, can't afford them all, so you might lose some. Coach might leave because I full heartedly believe if Holmgren would have stayed, the Packers were going to be in a lot of Super Bowls. And easier said than done, but I think Holmgren and Favre together were great. I think afterwards, who knows, but I think that just like breaking up, I think it's hard to win multiple for sure because
right.
things happen. Like you said, egos too. Like a lot of our guys start thinking who they are.
And I tell you, that's 2010. I remember right after they had a thing called Buckets for Hunger, and Wayne and that association, and Wayne who ran that since passed, but they used to have a lot of the guys from the glory years come back. And it was about, it was originally basketball games for raising food for people in need. And there was just a whole bunch of guys. These guys know football, and they were getting up and talking about how the Packers were probably going to three-peat. I mean, we knew we were going back. We were probably going to three-peat, right? And that was the year too that we had like 15 some guys on IR.
So you're thinking if they're back,
and
even better.
That's the 15-1 and done year. So you just never know.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, Packer fans know, I think, more than anyone. You never know. Like I'm never. That's why I always say, like this year, I always say you don't need to be number one seed. You just need to get hot at the end because number one seed, obviously, the Packers have done it. Didn't always work out for us. So it takes a lot. It takes good coaching. It takes a little bit of luck, not getting injuries. There's a lot to go into, and you never know what's going on in guys' personal lives. Like mistakes happen. You don't know like whatever they're going through. But yeah, it's just Packers always seem to find fluky ways to make season ending interesting.
I'll tell you, anytime if you can get somebody and go to a game with even some people from the other team, I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'll give a guy's name, and I got to explain the name. His nickname is called Crackman. But you got to understand, he's a known Detroit Lions fan probably for 40 years, and his last name is Crackiola. So they called him 40 years ago Crackman, which means a different thing 40 years ago than it means now. So this guy he was an inner city lineman for Power. So he's a working blue collar. He always comes out with bibs with cut off at the knees with his high leather work boots on. Diehard Lions fan all these years. I mean, they've never even been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I've gone there, and I mean, he's known by everybody, but that guy's out so you go, okay, big deal. He's got cut off shorts, in a dome. Well, you're tailgating for 4 hours before you go in that dome, and his knees are out there, whatever weather, in Eastern Market in Detroit. And you just see these different fans and stuff. And that's the other thing too about, I'll even say that too about Super Bowl 45. They had such big gatherings. They had this one bar that wasn't a Packer bar then, but it had a lot of space. And I've had friends that I met at that Super Bowl that I'm still in contact from this day. I would have never met them to there. One of them was a guy that, you got to know, and then he has a son born, and then his wife later on passes, but I know Dan real well. And there's Audrey. I met her just going around the game, and then she did a video of it, of the tailgate and everything else. Met her, and then when we had the NFC Championship game down in Atlanta, she calls up and calls me, Steve, you coming down? I think I can get some tickets. Yes, I am. And you have those kind of connections, the relationships you gain and the networking of that. And I joke all the time. I've met some of the nicest people I've ever known. A lot of Packer fans, a lot of teams from, because I wear insulation on my head.
That's so true. I say the same thing. Like, out of all the cool things I got to do and all the cool people I get to meet, it's all because I scream into my phone every now and again about the Packers. And I have goofy eyes. I can make fun of my eyes. And all this cool stuff happened.
I think that's the secret of life. Learning not laughing at people, laughing with yourself. Yeah, there's some things that but you just learn to roll with it. And a lot of times when you're going through something hard, there isn't a lot of laughter. But when you get through it and you're getting some healing, there's a lot of laughter you can have in life. And I have a really close friend. I just saw her this weekend, and she says she believes that laughter is the spiritual toothbrush for the soul. And
I
I like that. It just
I like that.
being able to laugh. You make a lot of fun off of that. There's a lot of people that it would be. I've seen people have things not. It's not fair. Life isn't fair. That's for sure. And there's
Yeah.
things that happen. And if you can learn to leverage it, have some fun with it, you're going to have a better life than just how you've been just screwed.
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of people because on TikTok I post a lot of videos with the eyes, and I've been doing it since forever. And I've had people message me and tell me like, "Hey, I'm cross-eyed. My eyes are just like yours, and I appreciate that what you're doing because kind of makes me feel more confident." Because like I wasn't always when I was a kid, like I didn't like it, and it wasn't as bad. The older I get, worse it gets. And like when I was a kid, they're brutal. So
Oh,
then when I got older, like, I started to realize like I can just if like who cares? I'll just start making fun of it. And if I make jokes funnier than their jokes, then what are they gonna do about it?
and here's the thing about it, even now I wear the wedge. You've heard enough one-liners that you've got so many different comebacks that somebody throws something out there and their little buddies go, "Oh," and you got 4 or 5 zingers to come back. This ain't your first rodeo.
Yeah.
And
My favorite one.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say my favorite thing is when someone comments on my Facebook or whatever and says, "Oh, you cheesehead, you're the typical cross-eyed Packer fan." I always say thanks. And then they don't really say anything because like, I really don't care. Like, hey, thanks. And I think it's funny because like a Viking fan, or I don't know what kind of post it was saying top ranked Viking Twitter pages. And it was like kind of saying people were talking about the Vikings all the time. And then named up all these people. And then at the bottom, it said that one cross-eyed Packers guy. And I was like, that's awesome. I made it. And then I made that like my name, the cross-eyed Packers guy. I might make shirts.
See, and I agree with you what you said. People, I moved around a lot, and in a lot of these small towns, and kids were looking for differences, and I was always the newcomer almost every year, and that meant outsider. And so I hear people say kids are they're brutal. Just anything they could find. I had a cowlick. I had a tooth that stuck out, was crooked, and it got snapped up. Just anything they can belittle you on, they did, and you just learn. And some of it helped me get a thicker skin later in life. And it helped me, but at the time, it's just brutal, right? And so
Oh
that's
yeah.
why now I think as you get older, you can have a little more understanding and compassion for other people and be able to laugh at yourself. So people always walk up to me, especially certain fan bases. You're not really an owner. I was a
Oh yeah.
manager in a Fortune 300 company. I know business. And I just look at them and well, you're not really an owner. And I go, you wouldn't spend $200 to help your team? Oh, hold it. You're a Viking fan. No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, and then I get that all the time too because I talk about it, and they're like, "You're not really owner, just a piece of paper." I'm like, yeah, it's like anything. It's like buying a jersey, and an autographed jersey, or whatever type of thing you have. But there are perks to it, like you get to go to the shareholders meeting, which I've never done yet. But like I think that there's some kind of thing like on their online shop, you might get a discount. But that's not why people buy it. People buy it because say I helped the team. Like I got one. It fell off my wall. It was hung up one night. It just fell, but I got to fix it. But like I'm glad to have it. I just got it because I wasn't always willing to pay. I was like I don't know, but finally like I had to get it. But yeah, like Packer fans know what it is. We know we're not gonna walk in there and be like, hey, I'm an owner. This is what needs to happen. We're gonna change the offense.
I tell you, buddy, but you should have saw the very first shareholder meetings. They'd have open questions. And I'm telling you, usually I don't like a question and answer session because usually it's people coming up with some little sermon they want to preach. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they would come up more times. Why aren't we allowed to buy tickets? Well, it was clear you weren't going to buy tickets. You weren't buying nothing with this, but people would come up and actual Packer fans were complaining about it. So it used to be but it's something the best part about it really for me is it's a revenue stream that Jerry Jones can't do.
Yeah.
I mean, $67 million for selling paper.
Yeah.
I got 3 of them. I bought the first one, I bought the second one, and I put Steve the Owner Tate in it, which isn't technically legal, I've heard now. But I'm telling you, they're never getting that piece of paper from me. They might take, and this last one, you could put your wife on it. So it's my name and my wife. So, it's one of those novelty, cool things that no other team can have. And we're the only, I mean, there's only been 6 of them in our 100-year plus history. And I know fanatic fans in Buffalo, in Cleveland, in Baltimore that bought a share of stock just so they could say they had a share of stock in the NFL because they're that big of fans. So there's people from other teams. The guy that's in, I mean, because of 3 shares now, I don't know what is it 4, so I got 12 tickets for every shareholder meeting. He sends me his 4 just in case I need any extra. So Matt, if you ever
gotta get to one.
It is fun. It's unique. And yeah, by the end, at the beginning, it's all hyped up and then at the end, when you're just going over numbers and you're sitting in the sun, yeah, it gets a little bit, but there's no other team that can do that.
Yep. And then that's why I wanted to go. I was going to go last year, but I didn't, but I want to experience it.
Let me know if you go too. Plus, a lot of times a group of us we've come together and you sit kind of in the same area and you just get and you see the same people, and then you walk around and you meet other people. And yeah, there's people, especially now there are people, hey, I seen you. Can I get a photo? And I tell you, most of the time, a lot of times, other fans want to feel close to the Packers, and they think sometimes we're closer than we are. But to them, that represents that they see you and get a photo with you, that they're a little bit close to the Packers, and it just makes it more of a connection for them. And you just get to be a little bit of an ambassador, and just help make somebody's day and give them a little smile and take a photo with them.
Yeah, I absolutely have a blast. Like I've had someone like bring me a tray of nachos one time, and I was in row 1, but my only time being in row 1, and I didn't really know him. I was like, I don't really want nachos. It was a big old tray of nachos, and I had a feeling that they were his nachos, but he just was trying to be nice. So it's like, no, thank you. I was like, but sit down, because it was before the game and nobody was in the seats. I was like, sit down, and then we chatted for a while. No, but I love that. Like anybody just walking up. Like I've had people like who I've talked, like they meet me, ask for a picture, and then we end up talking about the Packers, and then their wives are yelling. I'm like, let's go. I was like, I can talk Packers with anybody.
Right. Absolutely. Yep.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this thing up here in a second, but I do want to ask you one question. Do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Green Bay Packer next year? Do you think he's going to retire?
So I'm going to answer back. Do I think he's going to retire? I do not see Aaron wanting to go out with that kind of record. I just don't see it happening. So I think he comes back just from the competitive person that he is. Is he a Packer? He's got such a heavy salary cap that if the Packers were just to get out of it now, that's what's bad about that salary cap. They've got a lot of dead money on that. So from a business standpoint, it makes it really hard. If somebody were to come forward with a Jared Goff, Stafford deal, like that, I could see the Packers trying to move on that if they can get the money. I just think the amount of salary cap he has is really going to keep him locked in. Plus, I still don't think he wants to play, but I think he's going to want to play for only a select few teams, and he's got that no trade clause. So, first of all, I think he comes back. Secondly, I think more than likely the odds are way greater that he's a Green Bay Packer. Plus, Aaron is a history guy. He saw what it was like with Favre, and he's really not trying to do all that, because I tell you at the end there, do you remember? Matt, do you remember? I mean, people were making death threats and threatening all sorts of stuff when Favre was coming back, not coming back, to the Packer organization and to Aaron. So, I'm sure he's going to try to alleviate that. So I think the odds are probably pretty high he's back as a Green Bay Packer next year. Yeah, but I want to be clear. He hasn't called me up and talked that over with me.
You got no source. No, I actually agree with everything you said, because I think Rodgers cares about his legacy. I think he saw like his situation with Favre and like how people. I don't think he cared. I don't think anyone really should care. Like you shouldn't act a certain way so people like you or whatever. But I don't think he wants to go through that. I think he has the opportunity to retire as a Packer, be a Packer his whole career, be an absolute legend forever. And like I said, I think. And like people talk about him being traded to the Jets. I think that's another reason that wouldn't happen. I don't think Rodgers would want to play for the Jets because Favre did. I feel like he was compared to Favre most of his career. Now he's kind of obviously he is who he is. He crawled out of it. But I don't think like if he went to the Jets, he would hear Brett Favre's name every single day. And like, guys, I don't think he's going to get traded anyways. Like for a lot of reasons that you said, um, he said if he comes back, he'd want to be a Packer on Pat McAfee show. The Packers are kind of like saying, hey, if they signed him to a contract for a reason, they shouldn't have to say we want him. He's under contract, So I think I think he's a Packer, and then that leaves the question of like what's happening with Jordan Love, and that is a little bit above my expertise level. But a lot of people talk about he might get traded, but he might not. He might want to be if he's not going to be a starter at some point. He's gonna want to like, well, I'll have to see like what happens there, but. I definitely think Rodgers is coming back this year.
Same thing, and I think here, if you keep Jordan, you have to figure out a way to put him in some games to know that either you're going to extend him or you got to let him go. You can't
to make him feel
another year, not because I'll tell you, people forget. I don't know if you remember when Aaron was behind Brett and he came in one time and his hamstring and he didn't play. Oh, he's soft. He is not. I mean, there was a lot of people didn't think he could play at all, and obviously he's one of the best ever to play the position, right? So we really don't. The problem is we've had Jordan for 4 years coming on, and we really don't know who the guy is. So, and there's nothing like being in a game situation preseason. That's such, we've had guys backups play there, and they were, Hunley had great stats.
Yeah.
So you got to get out there. So the one thing, hey Matt, keep knocking out, keep having fun. You're a lot of fun to watch. I enjoy watching what you're doing. Secondly, the other fans, I like to say, enjoy the game and try to make it enjoyable for a few other people. Yeah, you want to beat the other team, but make it enjoyable. Oh, I forgot here too. I was at that game where we took the lead. That's the Bears Packers this year. We have the most wins in NFL history. The Bears had had that record since 1921.
Dude, that was such a great. And then people didn't even I felt like people didn't care enough because I was yelling about it.
Yes.
People were like, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
it matters.
But in the third quarter going, we had this. And then an 18-0 run in the fourth quarter. So, enjoy those games, but know that the other team, they're humans. They got lives too, and I'll say anything. If you like you said, you grew up with the rivalry and stuff, and you took a lot of flack. So that's for the one you have the most passion for, but you get to know some of the people on the other team. If there's a group of thems you don't like, get to know some of them. Get to know the individuals. There's always people you're going to like. And I'm telling you, I've got some really good friends. I've had people before my sister moved in. I used to have two rooms. One you couldn't walk in, and the other one barely, full of Packer rooms. I've had Viking and Bears and people from other teams sleep in there. Best night of sleep they've ever had. So, I've gone and stayed in their house. They're coming and stay in mine. Learn to enjoy life. It's short. I'm telling you, it goes by fast. Laugh, have some fun, and cheer on the Packers. Go Pack, go!
I love it. That is great advice. When I tell you, everyone knows when I talk trash, it's never personal. But I want to thank you. And if ever you're doing like a charity thing, I know that you guys do that. If you, if I can help promote anything in any way, let me know. Because I love doing a charity stuff, but I'm not good at like organizing stuff. I've done some stuff, but I always ask people because I see people doing like collecting money. I'm like, how do you guys do it? Because I don't know how to. I don't like having the money. I'd rather just promote someone else doing it. So I don't, It's a lot confusing. But I definitely want to use like my platform to help different causes. So
thanks,
definitely hit me up.
I'll let you know because I tell you, I've done some of that where you're at games and you go around collecting. I really don't like that.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah, it ain't for me. But I'll definitely do what I can to spread the word on anything that you guys are doing. And hey, I really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
You're someone who I've wanted to talk to for a long time. I always get excited when I see you. Like no matter what's happening, I'm like, all right, Steve's over there. I gotta go talk to Steve real quick.
Right. And that's the hard thing too when you're there. You get around, you want to see people, you get stopped here. There's sometimes you see somebody, you get talking, and they're gone. So 4 hours tailgates go by quick.
They do. They go by real fast. All right, I'm gonna let you go. I kept you longer than I wanted to. But go Pack, go, and have a good day, man. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for all you do. Have a good one.
All right, go Pack, go.
Yeah, go Pack, go.
Podcast, big shot to Quick Trip, sponsoring the show as always. And this was a fun one. This was a good one. Go Pack Go, everyone. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening.